It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome into another very special edition of Rico Brogna. Hopefully you are enjoying your holidays, however the heck you're celebrating it. We have reached the conclusion of this three-part mini-series, if you will, as we count down the 20 greatest home runs in the history of the New York Mets. This is episode 3 of this three-part series. Our first part was honorable mention, a lot of home runs in Met history that just didn't make the cut. In part 2, which hopefully you had a chance to listen to, we began our rankings from number 20 to number 11. And on this edition, we will go from number 10 to number 1. It is not easy because now we are getting down into the nitty-gritty of some great home runs in the history of the New York Mets. Some of these home runs were before my time. I am trying to rank them and rate them in the fairest way possible. We are done with regular season home runs. Okay, we went through a few of those when we went from number 20 to number 11. In case you missed part 2, I'll give you a quick synopsis, and then you could go back and listen to it if you so choose. Number 20 was Gary Carter's opening day walk-off home run in 1985. Number 19 was Asdrubal Cabrera's game winner against the Phillies, helping rescue the Mets, and of course they'd make the playoffs that year, just a week later. Number 18 was June 30th, 2000. Mike Piazza caps off the 10-run inning against the Braves with a game-winning 3-run home run in the 8th inning. Number 17 was Carlos Beltran breaking a 0-0 tie against Jeff Weaver with a 2-run home run in Game 1 of the 2006 NLCS, only runs the Mets would need. Number 16 was Jose Reyes hitting a leadoff home run against Chris Carpenter to set the tone for Game 6 of the 2006 NLCS. Number 15 was Darryl Strawberry off the clock in St. Louis, October 1st, 1985, a game-winning home run in the 11th inning against the Cardinals. Number 14 was David Wright hitting a home run at Citi Field in his very first plate appearance in a World Series game at Citi Field, giving the Mets a brief lead in Game 3 of the World Series. Number 13, rightfully so, number 13, Edgardo Alfonso's grand slam against the Diamondbacks and Bobby Schwinard in Game 1 of the 1999 NLDS. Number 12, Mike Piazza, in a loss, goes opposite field against a side-arming John Smoltz to tie Game 6 of the 1999 National League Championship Series in the 7th inning. And number 11, Wilmer Flores, from tears to tears of joy, or whatever the heck they said. July 31st, 2015, Wilmer Flores hitting that game-winning home run against the Washington Nationals. So that's how we ranked them, 20 through 11. Now let's get to number 10. Let's get to Game 3 of the 2000 National League Division Series, one of the most classic games you will ever see. The Mets, the San Francisco Giants, they're tied 1 apiece after a split in San Francisco. The Mets are trailing in this game 2-0. They score a run in the 6th inning on a Timo Perez RBI single. And then, like always, Edgardo Alfonso does something that nobody remembers, but it turns out to be one of the biggest things he could have done. Edgardo Alfonso against Rob Nen, the Giants' dominant closer who is trying to secure a 4-out save, comes through with a clutch RBI double in the 8th inning to tie this game up at 2-2. And now we go deep into the night. It was actually not that deep into the night because it was a 4:20 first pitch. So despite this game turning into a 5.5-hour game, it actually ended at a reasonable time. And if memory serves correct, the Yankees were playing a home playoff game at the exact same time. But it was like, whatever, who cares? The Mets became the priority because they were involved in an absolute classic against the San Francisco Giants. And then finally, with 1 out in the bottom of the 13th inning, a guy who is very popular amongst Met fans was able to write his name in Met lore by walking it off in the bottom of the 13th of Game 3 of the 2000 NLDS.
Agbayani hits into deep left center. 13th inning. Mets win Game 3.
Two underrated things about this game. Obviously, Benny Agbayani hitting the walk-off, an absolute amazing moment at Shea Stadium. Number one, Russ Ortiz, who started the game for the San Francisco Giants, pitched 5 no-hit innings. The Mets were actually being no-hit until the 6th inning of this game, which you sort of forget about when a game goes 13 innings. The other thing is that when the Mets tied the game up in the 8th inning, they actually did it against Doug Henry, who's a former Met reliever. So, I don't know, maybe for me it was a little bit of revenge, considering Doug Henry stunk when he was a bad Met reliever in the mid-1990s. But who could forget it? Benny Agbayani's walk-off home run in the bottom of the 13th inning. It made the top 10. It's moment number 10. Let's get to moment number 9. I referred to this home run in our last episode. I talked about Jose Reyes hitting a leadoff home run against the St. Louis Cardinals. Mets are down 3-2. Man, they were desperate. They needed him. Well, the original man to do that, the original man to come through in a moment like that was Lenny Dykstra. And let me just give you a little heads up. Lenny Dykstra is all over this list. He had some impactful moments in the history of the New York Mets, and this one is certainly up there. The Mets are down 2-0. They've lost the first 2 games of the World Series at home to the Boston Red Sox. The odds of coming back are not exactly very good. And unlike Jose Reyes, here's what's a little bit different. Len Dykstra is legitimately the first hitter of the game. And he's facing Oil Can Boyd, and the count is 1-1, and the third pitch of the game would set the tone for what the Mets were about to do in Game 3 of the 1986 World Series.
1 ball, 1 strike. High drive down the right field line, hooking in the corner. If it's fair, it's gone. It's gone. Lenny Dykstra takes Oil Can deep, and the Mets lead 1-0.
That's the kind of thing a ball club needs to get picked up. They jump out 1 man, 1 run, and that whole ball club, you can see that Met bench is waiting for him.
That was the first extra base hit by the Mets in the World Series.
It shows you how bad they were in the first 2 games. I mean, they didn't just lose the first 2 games to the Red Sox. They were thoroughly outplayed, and they didn't hit. That home run could have meant nothing. The Mets needed to build off of it, which is exactly what they did. Gary Carter drove in a couple of runs in that first inning. Danny Heap drove in a couple of runs in that first inning. And so they jumped all over Oil Can Boyd, and Bob Ojeda did a great job pitching in his former stomping grounds. And so the Mets were able to take advantage of this, and they won this game 7-1 going away. The drama of this game was taken out immediately by the import of Lenny Dykstra hitting that home run. One of the most important home runs in the history of the New York Mets, and that is why, without a shadow of a doubt, it's in your top 10, and it's the 9th greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets. Let's get to number 8. So this home run is also before my time, but I rewatched this game. I think I did it during the pandemic. I rewatched this game. It was a very, very odd game. The Mets are playing the Houston Astros. It's obviously the NLCS. The series is tied at 3. Mets lost game 1 to Mike Scott, 1-0. They come back. They win game 2. They're up. They win 5-1. Series is tied at 1. So this is a very pivotal game 3. The start time of this game was early, man. This was a National League Championship game that started at 12:20 in the afternoon. And when I rewatched this game on YouTube during the pandemic, one of the things that jumped out at me is how empty the stadium was. You know, it eventually filled up. Don't get me wrong. But at 12:20, it was not exactly packed. And it wasn't middle of the week. It was a Saturday. But it was a sunny day. The Mets are taking on the Houston Astros, and they couldn't figure out Bob Knepper. And the Mets are getting shut down in this game. They actually gave up 2 runs in the first inning, 2 runs in the second inning. It was not Ron Darling's sharpest. And so the Mets are down 4-0, and they're not doing much against Bob Knepper. And things are getting a little nerve-wracking. You know, the Mets going to be able to fight back? Are they going to fall behind in this series 2-1? And we've all heard the stories about the looming threat of Mike Scott. You don't want to be in a spot where Mike Scott can finish you off. And then in the bottom of the 6th inning, the Mets began rallying in game 3 against Bob Knepper. They got a base hit by Kevin Mitchell. They got a base hit by Keith Hernandez. Gary Carter reached on an error. And now all of a sudden it's 4-1. And Darryl Strawberry changed everything about this game with one swing of the bat.
Strawberry is up facing Knepper. It is now a 4-1 ball game. Strawberry hits it high in the air to right. Fast to the wall. It's gone.
I give you a hint. That is not the last home run from this game, which is a kind of a pattern with the top 10 home runs in New York Met history. Some of them occur in the same game, but we've got some time before we get to the next one. But incredible moment. They're down 4-0. They're on the verge of falling down 2-1 to the Houston Astros. Who knows how different that series looks? And Darryl Strawberry, who's on this list of a few times, as you may have noticed, hits a game-tying home run. What I can't get over about that series, the Met-Astros series, is how the Astros had home field advantage. It makes no sense to me. Now, the reality is, I think there were two things going on that caused the Mets to not have home field advantage. Number one, back in the day, they used to switch off who would have home field based on divisions. It was not based on record, which, I mean, logic would tell you it would be based on record. But I think there was also something going on at the Astrodome that caused the scheduling conflict to where the Mets had to be the road team and the Astros had home field advantage. That sounds, in this day and age, like utter lunacy. I remember how people used to give you fake outrage about the All-Star game. Remember how the All-Star game would determine home field advantage? It always bothered me how fake people outrage was. Like, oh, can you believe it? I can't believe they're determining it by an All-Star game. The reason I believed it was fake outrage, the reason it really pissed me off is that, does anybody know, or did those people know, what determined home field advantage before that? And the answer was odd year versus even year. That's okay, though. The numerical number of the year you're good with, like, no problem. I got no problem with that. But God forbid, who wins a competitive game? No, we can't have that. Well, in the LCSs, it was even dumber. It was just switching off division by division. So the fact that the Mets had to play the first 2 games in Houston, the fact that the Mets had to play game 6 in Houston, it's mind-boggling. But I guess it all worked out, right? So Darryl Strawberry's game-tying 3-run home run, 6th inning, game 3 of the NLCS. That is your 8th greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets. Let's get to number 7. This is a special one. I would tell you, for my money, game 5 of the National League Divisional Series between the New York Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers, winner-take-all game 5, is as good as maybe any game you'll ever see. Jacob deGrom on the mound. Just everything about that game was so dramatic. But there was a moment, there was a home run in this game that really stands above all the rest. If you remember this game at all, the Mets took an early 1-0 lead because Daniel Murphy hit a triple. And, of course, Daniel Murphy was blossoming into a star at this time. Jacob deGrom gave 2 runs back in the bottom of the first inning, but he was able to battle out of a jam in which it could have been worse. So they're down 2-1, but deGrom now settles in. And even though the Dodgers are putting guys on base every single inning, he's fighting, he's clawing, he's getting his way through it. The Mets tie the game at 2-2 on a Travis d'Arnaud sacrifice fly. So we're involved in this winner-take-all Game 5 National League Divisional Series. Jacob deGrom against Zach Greinke. deGrom is battling. He's leaving his guts out there on the field. And Daniel Murphy, who had come up with that RBI triple early in the game, had a base hit and a stolen base and scored the tying run on the d'Arnaud sacrifice fly, comes up in the 6th inning of a tie game. And this swing turned out to be the difference in what was one of the great one of the great postseason games in the history of the New York Mets.
3-2 is driven to right. That ball is gone. Daniel Murphy has broken the tie here in the 6th. It is 3-2 Mets.
Oh, God. And, of course, Jacob deGrom got through the 6th. They got a scoreless inning out of Noah Syndergaard. And one of the most underrated things about that Game 5 was how Jeurys Familia, who's now maligned in Met history, got a 6-out save against the LA Dodgers, including getting Chase Utley to hit one of the warning track that somehow stayed in the ballpark. Mets win 3-2. Daniel Murphy's home run in the 6th inning turns out to be the winner. That's a big one. A game-winning home run in an elimination game on the road against a borderline Hall of Fame pitcher in Zach Greinke. Daniel Murphy at 7. Maybe you could argue it should be better than that. You certainly could. Let's get to number 6. I think we've said Darryl Strawberry's name a few times, haven't we? Darryl is all over this list. He was number 15 when he hit the clock tower in St. Louis for a regular season game. We just listed him a few minutes ago at number 8 for hitting a game-tying home run against the Astros in Game 3 of the NLCS. How about the most important insurance home run in the history of the New York Mets? We take you back to 1986, Game 7 of the World Series. The Mets had built the lead, and then the Red Sox started to come back. If you don't remember this game, you can go into the archives of the Rico Brogna. About a year ago when we did our Rico rewatch for 2024, that was the game we rewatched. Actually, that was 2 years ago. I apologize. 2023's rewatch. We watched Game 7 of the 86 World Series because to me, it's like an underrated game. It's a winner-take-all World Series game. Mets haven't exactly been a part of a lot of those. And they had come back. They had taken the lead. It felt comfortable. And then the Red Sox scored 2 runs to make it a 6-5 game. You're starting to sweat it out. Until Darryl Strawberry came up in the 8th inning and said, "Don't worry, Jesse Orozco. I'll give you some insurance."
High drive into deep right field. Evans back at the wall. Gone.
Darryl Strawberry. And congratulations to Darryl Strawberry because 3 home runs in the top 20 in New York Met history. 3. That's not bad. And you imagine, well, what if he never left? What if he didn't go to Los Angeles? Would things have been different? Would he have been on this list a few more times? Probably not, because the Mets were about to crumble. But nevertheless, Darryl Strawberry's insurance home run, Game 7 of the 1986 World Series, is moment number 6. We are now into the top 5. 5 greatest home runs in the history of the New York Mets. Let's go back to, October 9th, 1999. The New York Mets are facing the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 4 of the National League Championship Series. And believe it or not, the Mets blew a lead in the 8th inning of this game. And much like the 86 stuff with the Astros, the Mets were facing a similar thing. If they had lost Game 4 to Arizona, they were going to go back to Arizona to face Randy Johnson. That's kind of a daunting task, despite what the Mets did to Randy Johnson a little bit earlier. So you really needed to win this game. And in the 8th inning of this game, Armando Benitez gave us a little bit of a preview of what he would become. At this point, we didn't know if Armando Benitez was a complete choke artist. We were still kind of learning our way. And he came in to face Jay Bell with 2 on and 2 out in the 8th inning, nursing a 1-run lead. And he gave up a 2-run double off the wall. That didn't work out very well. Luckily, the Mets got some pretty good defense in which Armando Benitez was able to get out of the inning even after he gave up a Matt Williams base hit because of an outfield assist. So Armando Benitez never actually got anybody out to end the 8th inning. And the Mets were down by 1 run. And then the Mets began to rally. They got helped out by some shoddy Arizona defense, and they tied the game on a sacrifice fly by Roger Cedeno. So we were talking about a tie game going into your late afternoon. This was another afternoon game, a Saturday afternoon at Shea Stadium. Cloudy, overcast day. And the Mets and Diamondbacks were tied 3-3. And boy, you could feel the tension in that building because you did not want to go back to Arizona. You did not want to face Randy Johnson. Didn't want to do it. Credit to Armando Benitez. After he gave up the lead, he actually came back and pitched a 1-2-3 9th inning, as did John Franco in the bottom of the 10th inning. But you're starting to look at that Met bullpen and you're saying, all right, where are we going here? We're going to go to Turk Wendell. We're going to go to Octavio Dotel. How late is this game going to go? The Diamondbacks are already gone to their closer. See, Buck Showalter wasn't always afraid of going to his closer in a non-save situation. He went to Matt Manti. And Matt Manti was pitching a lot in this game. He actually got through the 8th inning. Then he pitched the 9th inning. And at this point, it's like, hey, I got my season on the line. I got to keep Matt Manti in this game. So with 1 out in the 10th inning, he faced Todd Pratt. Todd Pratt started this game because Mike Piazza was hurt. Mike Piazza was very banged up at the end of the 1999 season to the point where he wasn't healthy enough to start this game. The Mets cleanup hitter in this game against Arizona was Benny Agbayani. Todd Pratt was batting 6th. But baseball's a funny sport, isn't it, Susan? sometimes the situation finds you. And with one out in the 10th inning of a tie game, and the Mets trying to avoid going back to Arizona, trying to clinch the division series and advance to their first LCS since 1988, Todd Pratt became a Mets legend.
Ball deep to center field. Back goes Finley, going back. Warning track at the wall. Jumping, and it's out of here. It's out of here. Pratt hit it over the fence. Finley jumped and he missed it. The Mets win the ball game. The Mets win the ball game on a home run over the center field fence by Todd Pratt. The Mets have won the series 3-1. Todd Pratt hit it over the center field fence. Finley made a leap. Pratt didn't know. Pratt was standing between first and second. Then he saw Finley downcast.
He saw Finley downcast. There was that pause where it looks like Steve Finley's going to make that catch. And he was a very good defensive center fielder back in his time. And he jumps up. It's almost like he just really screwed up the timing of the jump. Comes down, looks at his glove, and is like, crap, I guess it's not there. And it was long gone. And the New York Mets won the game. They won the series, and a party absolutely ensued at Shea Stadium. I always remember the visual of John Franco running out there, almost like he took a crap in his pants, like very awkwardly jumping up and down. And it was a wild, wild celebration as Todd Pratt sent the Mets to the National League Championship Series, where they would go on to face the Atlanta Braves. That is the 5th best home run in the history of the New York Mets. Let's get to number 4. This is so clutch. This is so beyond clutch. And, there's a butterfly effect with this home run. If this home run is not hit in Game 3 of the 1986 National League Championship Series, there are so many other memories we don't get. So we mentioned this game a few minutes earlier. This is where Darryl Strawberry hit the game-tying home run. Mets were down 4-0. They rally. They tie the game at 4. It's this weird early afternoon start. Mets are down, where the Mets are tied 1-1 in this best-of-7 series against the Astros. Well, after Darryl Strawberry hit the home run, believe it or not, the very next inning, the Astros retook the lead. And they retook the lead, want to think about butterfly effects, on a throwing error by Ray Knight. The same Ray Knight that would go on and be the World Series MVP. So the Astros had a 5-4 lead. Mets didn't score in the bottom of the 7th inning. Mets didn't score in the bottom of the 8th inning. And now they go to the 9th inning and they're facing Dave Smith. And they are down by a run. And they are 3 outs away from going down 2-1. Wally Backman leads off with a bunt single. Then he goes to second on a passed ball, little old-fashioned passed ball. And after Danny Heap flies out, the tying run is on second. The Mets are down by a run. And Lenny Dykstra does it again. For the second time, he's in the top 10. And this one, you could argue should be even better than 4th. But ladies and gentlemen, number 4, Lenny Dykstra.
Lenny Dykstra, the man they call Nails on the Mets ball club, is waiting. Now the pitch. And a high fly ball hit the right field. It is fairly deep. It's way back by the wall. He did it! It's a home run! A home run! The Mets win the ball game. Dykstra hits a home run. Len Dykstra hit a home run. This ball game is over. Lenny Dykstra being mobbed by his teammates.
Oh, the Bob Murphy call just adds to it, man. Especially when you hear Gary Thorne at the end, when the ball is out, kind of, it's out. Incredible moment. Absolutely incredible moment. A game-winning, down by a run, about to be down in the series. Clutch home run by Len Dykstra. I think it's one of Bob Murphy's greatest calls. Mets win the game. And so 2 home runs from the same game. Game 3 of the National League Championship Series between the New York Mets and the Houston Astros. Believe it or not, there weren't that many home runs in the 1960s. Because I'm sure you're thinking, how come nothing from 1969? Well, don't worry. It's all the way up at number 3. We're going to take you all the way back to Game 5 of the 1969 World Series. Of course, this would turn out to be the clincher, but it sounds easy. It sounds like, well, the Mets won in 5. No big deal. The Mets were playing the Baltimore Orioles, the heavily favored Baltimore Orioles, a team that was almost like a mini dynasty in the late 60s and early 70s. So when the Mets lost Game 1, it was sort of expected. Well, all right, they're not as good as the Orioles. They win Game 2, they win Game 3, they win Game 4, but Game 5, there's still a lot of pressure. If the Mets don't win Game 5, they got to go back to Baltimore and have to find a way to win another game in Baltimore against the Orioles. So this was a very important game. Win a championship at home, but also potentially avoid blowing a 3-1 series lead. Dave McNally was on the mound against Jerry Koosman, and the Orioles jumped out to a 3-0 lead. In fact, they had a 3-0 lead going into the bottom of the 6th inning of this game. So I'm sure for anyone who was in Shea Stadium that day, the nerves were starting to kind of get on you a little bit. Like, oh, crap, we got to go back to Baltimore. Don Clendenin hit a 2-run home run to make it 3-2. Maybe this should be on the list. But that wasn't all. Al Weiss, not exactly a known name, not exactly a slugger of his time, would come up in the bottom of the 7th inning, down by a run in Game 5 of the World Series against Dave McNally, and I think pretty much surprised everybody when he tied the game by doing this.
That's a fly ball to deep left, and Buford breaks back now. It's going, and it is gone for a home run for Al Weiss. And the score is tied at 3-3. Become the hitting star of the World Series for the New York Mets. That is his 5th hit in this World Series. The way that Don Buford played that ball, you'd have to guess that it got a little help from the wind once it got up there.
Just to give you perspective on how insane it was, that Al Weiss, of all people, hit a game-tying home run in Game 5 of the 1969 World Series. That year, Al Weiss played 103 games. He had 269 plate appearances. He hit 2 home runs. His career high. Al Weiss never hit more than 2 home runs in a season. His grand total in his major league career, which spanned 800 games, is 7. Just keep that in perspective. So I know it's weird, and it's like, who's Al Weiss? Or maybe you know Al Weiss, especially if you're older and you know Met history. But this is not exactly Don Clendenin hitting a home run. This is Al Weiss. And so his only postseason home run, he hit 7 regular season home runs, but he did hit the game-tying home run off Dave McNally in Game 5 of the World Series. In case you're curious about what would happen next, the Mets would take the lead on a Ron Swoboda RBI double. They would add insurance after an Oriole error, and Jerry Koosman would finish what he starts by getting the last 3 outs, including future manager Davey Johnson, to fly out to left field, and the New York Mets were world champions. Let's get to number 2. And let us also get the controversy out of the way, because maybe you were listening to this wondering, asking yourself, is it going to be there? Is it going to count as a home run? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my damn list, and Robin Ventura's grand slam single is a home run. It went over the fence. So if you want to tell me, Evan, stop it, it's not a home run, it doesn't count as a home run. Look, there are things in life that count a certain way, but that doesn't mean it's true. You know what I mean? There are certain things maybe your husband or wife will tell you, and you'll go along with it. And for the record, it will count a certain way, but you know the truth. We all know the truth. When Robin Ventura took on Kevin McGlinchey in Game 5 of the 1999 NLCS, he hit a ball that went over the fence. It went over the fence. Granted, the Mets tackled Robin Ventura, and they wouldn't allow him to round the bases, but the ball went over the fence. So It's a grand slam. It counts as a home run. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this game because this game is certifiable. A 15-inning absolute classic. And, you know, we talk about long games. That was nearly a 6-hour baseball game, but it started at 4:11. So I think I said this with the Benny Agbayani home run. Because it was an afternoon game, it didn't end that late at night. You know, it ended at about 10 o'clock at night, even if it was a 6-hour game. But what a freaking game. Mets take an early 2-0 lead on a John Olerud home run. The Braves tie it in the 4th inning when they get 2 runs driven in, one by Chipper Jones, one by Brian Jordan, the tag team of hell. And that was it. That was the only offense we would see until we got to the 15th inning. The Mets didn't exactly get a lot of deep starting pitching in this game. Masato Yoshi got knocked out after 3 innings, but Oral Hershiser got 10 outs in this game out of the bullpen. Turk Wendell was able to get an out. Pat Mahomes pitched a scoreless inning. Kenny Rogers, we kill him for what happened a few days later, but Kenny Rogers pitched 2 scoreless innings out of the bullpen, and young Octavio Dotel came into a pretty rough spot, 13th inning of a tie game. Let us not forget, though, that Octavio Dotel gave up the lead in the 15th inning on a Keith Lockhart RBI double, but Melvin Mora had an outfield assist a few innings earlier that made sure a run didn't score. So the Mets were getting great defense, but they did give up the lead. And at that point, going into the bottom of the 15th inning, there was not a lot of hope. The only, I guess, positive was that they had already used John Rocker. John Rocker, who was so dominant and so frustrating, had already come out and pitched well, but at that point, Bobby Cox had moved on. That's why it wasn't John Rocker trying to save the game. It was this little-known pitcher named Kevin McGlinchey. But in the 15th inning of this game, the Mets are down by a run, and maybe until Lindor this year against the Brewers, Sean Dunston put together, as good of an at-bat as you will ever see. Kept fouling pitches off in the rain of the 15th inning down by a run, and then finally poked one up the middle for a base hit. Just an absolute all-timer of an at-bat by Sean Dunston. And then he steals second base. And then the Mets draw a walk. Matt Franco drew a walk. Then they get the bunt down by Edgardo Alfonso. Then they intentionally walk John Olerud. You kind of have to. And then Todd Pratt, who had come into this game 2 innings earlier for Mike Piazza, because remember, Piazza's banged up. He's now caught 12 innings of a game. Bobby Valentine took him out, which could have gone down as one of the big second guesses, right, in the history of the New York Mets. As hurt as he was, you taking Mike Piazza out in the 13th inning? But Todd Pratt drew a walk as well. And that was the walk that relaxed me because that was the bases loaded walk to tie the game up. Mets had tied the game. And in that moment, I shut my scorebook. It was raining. I don't think the towel I was using could hold that rain any longer. And so I shut the book and my dad said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm pretty sure I'm about to remember what happens. Not because I knew Ventura was hitting a grand slam, but because, all right, they had tied the game. The bases are loaded with 1 out. If Ventura bounces into a double play, I'm going to remember it. If Ventura strikes out and now it's up to Melvin Mora, I'm going to remember it. And obviously, if Ventura comes through, I will remember it. And I think we all do remember it. And for anyone who wants to dispute that this isn't a home run, listen to the call. The call will tell you what it is.
A drive to right. Back to Georgia. Gone. A grand slam. What a scene at Shea.
Well, they will not let Robin Ventura run around the bases.
Have you ever seen anything like this? He's got to circle the bases for his grand slam to be official. I'm looking for the umpires, and they've left the scene.
So the reason we're using the Bob Costas call, Gary Cohn had a great call too, was because of the way they were interested in is this a home run? Where are the umpires? Do they even get to see this? It's actually a great call by Bob Costas. What a scene at Shea. Have you ever seen anything like this? It's back to Georgia. I thought it was a great call by Bob. But it is funny hearing the confusion of, where are the umpires? Is he going to get to round the bases? Is this going to count? Here's the way I look at this. Yeah, in the history books, it's not a home run. In my scorecard that I'm looking at right now, it is not a home run. I have it written down as a game-winning single. But I think for the sake of this and this discussion on the greatest home runs in the history of the New York Mets, it is a home run. Pete Hoffman, I ask you, as someone who's done a great job getting all these clips ready, doing a wonderful job with these Ricos, officially, is it a home run?
No doubt about it. That ball cleared the fences. And listen, just the same way that I look at Armando Galarraga as having a perfect game, this is too a Grand Slam home run. Congratulations, Robin.
Congratulations, Robin Ventura. You're number 2. But you are at number 1. And I think before we engage in Pete Alonso's home run and Lindor's home runs, I think we all have to universally agree that without a shadow of a doubt, this is the number 1 home run in the history of the New York Mets. Because does it get much better than a home run that wins your team a world championship? In fact, are there any others that qualify? Any other home runs in Met history that qualify as that home run won me a world championship? Earlier in these rankings, you heard Darryl Strawberry adding an insurance home run in this game. But before it was Darryl, it was World Series MVP Ray Knight. The Mets were trailing 3-0 to the Red Sox in Game 7, and they rallied. They did it in the bottom of the 6th inning. Keith Hernandez came up big. Gary Carter was the one who tied it on an RBI ground out, and it was 3-0 going into the bottom of the 7th inning of Game 7 of the World Series. I mean, keep that in mind. And Calvin Schiraldi was on the mound, and the batter was Ray Knight.
High drive into deep left center. Back goes Weiss. This one is gone.
It don't get much better than that. It is a World Series winning, game-winning home run. It occurred in the bottom of the 7th inning. The Mets would add insurance, Rafael Santana, Keith Hernandez sacrifice fly. But like I mentioned, the Red Sox actually made it closer. They scored 2 runs in the top of the 8th inning to make it 6-5. Darryl hits the home run to make it 7-5. Jesse Orosco, of all people, comes through with an RBI hit to make it 8-5. And that's how it ended. The New York Mets win the World Series. There's no disputing that. That's the greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets. Ray Knight's game winner in the 7th game of the World Series. He was the World Series MVP, and he is the winner, in my humble opinion, as the greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets. But I guess the question you have to ask yourself, after doing this exercise, after hearing all of these home runs, where do the ones from 2024 rank? Where do they fit into this puzzle? So let's start by at least asking this question. From 2024, to me, there are 3 home runs. Lindor game 161, Alonso against Milwaukee, Lindor's grand slam. Of those 3, which one is number 1? Like, I think before we kind of fit where everything goes, we got to look back at this past season and determine, well, where do those go? To me, Pete Alonso is number 1. I think the shock of it, the season about to be over, which, I mean, you think back to a lot of these home runs. I don't think any of these home runs have that qualification. Like, you're in the 9th inning and you're about to lose and go home. Not you're about to lose and go back to Arizona, or you're about to lose and what have you. Like, even the Ventura one, which is the closest, they had already tied the game. Alonso's fits in this very unique criteria that their season was about to end. And oh, by the way, his legacy was on the line because Alonso was about to be run out of town. So of the 3 home runs from 2024, to me, I put Alonso number 1.
I'm torn because we had a similar conversation, and I was going to go Lindor grand slam against the Phillies because of the significance. Again, winning the game, they won the series. But you're right, when everything, the culmination, last chance, last opportunity for the Mets, and Pete Alonso delivers when they're down to their last at bat. It's you can't really get any better than that.
That's where I'm at, because I also think it's the combination of the season about to have been over, plus what it meant for Pete. I don't think there's anyone else who hit a home run where if they don't hit that home run or they don't come through, we view them completely differently. So I think in Alonso's case, and that's what makes it to me more special than Lindor's home runs, Lindor was having an MVP year. If Lindor doesn't hit the grand slam against the Phillies or even the home run in game 161, I don't think we're viewing Francisco Lindor as some kind of choke artist. There wouldn't have been that magical moment. So I put Alonso number one. I would put Lindor game 161 number two, because while their backs weren't fully against the wall, if they don't come back, that's a brutal loss after Edwin Diaz blew it an inning earlier. And then you don't know what happens in game 162. The Lindor one at Citi Field, I think there's a bias towards because of the fact that it was a home game, the crowd was crazy, and it was awesome. But at the end of the day, someone else could have come through. It was the sixth inning. You know what I mean? Like, I know that was a frustrating game because the Mets had a million guys on base and they couldn't break through. But if I'm ranking those three home runs before we put it in the context of Met history, I go Alonso 1, Lindor in game 161 2, and then the grand slam number 3.
But for me, the reason, and I guess I don't really, I'm fighting a fight that I'm agreeing with you in, but I would sell you on the fact that the playoff home run for Lindor, the grand slam, it was fitting that it was Lindor who came through in that spot, and that's what made it special.
I get
that's
that.
why you can argue that it could be number 2 on that list.
I understand. I totally get that. Now, where do we put it amongst the greats? So let me start with Alonso. I cannot put that ahead of a Game 7 World Series winning home run. I also admit I didn't experience it. So I'm saying that very straightforward. It's not like I can compare my emotions to the Ray Knight game-winning home run versus Pete Alonso. So I'll keep that at number 1, but I would put Pete Alonso number 2. I would put it ahead of the Robin Ventura grand slam single. I would put it ahead of the Al Weiss game-tying home run in the World Series in 1969. Again, I didn't experience it. I'd put it ahead of Todd Pratt. I'd put it ahead of Lenny Dykstra. I would go as the second greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets. I would jump every single home run with the exception of Ray Knight, Game 7. It is a World Series winning home run, but that's how far up I'd put the Alonso home run. Second greatest home run in the history of the franchise.
I mean, and I'm not saying that your list, this is your list. I haven't done a list at all. This is Evan Roberts' list. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't put Pratt where it was and Ventura where it was, but I kind of feel like it's hanging around the Pratt home run. I remember vividly of where it was for the Todd Pratt, Robert Ventura home runs. The Pratt was so significant. They win the series. Again, I understand that they won the series with Pete Alonso's home run. But this is a walk-off. You know what I mean? Like, the walk-off is a little bit more special. You get to, like, celebrate on your own field. It just is amazing. So it's around there, maybe tied. I don't know if you could do a 2A and a 2B, but I think that the Robin Ventura is special, again, even though it's really not a home run. I think the Pratt and the Alonso kind of go hand in hand.
Fair enough. Where I try to fit Lindor 161, I'll tell you right now, I put it over every other regular season game. Like the Wilmer Flores walk-off against the Nationals, I have rated as the best regular season home run in the history of the New York Mets. This Lindor one destroys it. So it's clearly in the top 10. It's more debating who am I bumping. Am I bumping Agbayani in the 13th inning? Am I bumping, Darryl Strawberry's 3-run home run to tie it in the 6th inning of an NLCS game? The answer is yes. I would actually put it right behind Daniel Murphy breaking the tie in Game 5 and slightly ahead of Darryl Strawberry tying Game 3 of the NLCS. I would put the Lindor 161 as the 8th greatest home run in the history of the Mets. I guess technically 9th if I'm also including the Alonso one, since we're sticking 2 in there. But I would have it in the top 10 and clearly ahead of every other regular season home run. I mean, when you compare it to the Flores one, the Strawberry one off the clock in 85, Gary Carter on opening day, I got to tell you, I don't even think those home runs, as great as those were, I don't think it's close to Lindor 161. That's why Beningo came on with us. We were doing a live watch party during that game. So it's a very weird environment. And Beningo's first reaction was, I think that's the greatest home run in the history of the regular season. And I don't think there's any doubt that he's right about that. It is the greatest home run in the history of the regular season.
What was the number 6 on your list again?
Number 6 was Darryl Strawberry extending the Met lead in Game 7 of the 1986 World Series.
I think it goes above that. I think that home run was so significant. The pressure situation, again, if it was 162, it would be that much greater. But it felt like 162 because you just never knew with how this team was going. It was such a big moment, the back and forth. I think it's right there. It's below, again, like we said, it's below the Pete Alonso, and I'm putting Pete Alonso and Pratt very neck and neck.
Yep.
I think it's right there.
I would put the Lindor Grand Slam also in the top 10, believe it or not. Like, where do I put it? I put it slightly behind Lindor 161, but probably kind of right there with, actually, you know what I think I do when I look at my own rankings? I think I put it just slightly behind Lindor 161. I think they go back to back, believe it or not. So, look, I'm not saying everybody agrees with me on this, but in my opinion, I have 3 home runs from this past season entering the top 10 as 3 of the greatest home runs in the history of the franchise, which I guess is a reminder on how unique and special this 2024 season was. Because I think those 3 home runs get into the top 10. And I'd put the Lindor Grand Slam just right behind Lindor 161.
This may be stupid, but do we have to go through all the home runs that have taken place this season to see if any others sneak through?
Well, here's the way to play that game. What jumps out at you? I mean, there are other great home runs, but there's a difference between great home runs and top 10 in the history of the franchise, the ones that you'll remember where you were and how you felt, things like that. And I think that's why those 3 just jump out more than any other. Like, they're going to stand the test of time. And 1999 has a bunch of those. That's why I mentioned 1999 is so similar. I mean, think about it. I have Ventura's Grand Slam single as number 2, 1999. Todd Pratt against the Diamondbacks is 5th, 1999. And Piazza against John Smoltz, 1999 is 12th. And Alfonso against the Diamondbacks, 1999. So at least for me, I have 4 home runs from 1999 in the top 13. So I guess that's why 99 and 24 feel so similar. Very special years that unfortunately didn't go as far as maybe we dreamt at the time.
I feel like there's a J.D. Martinez regular season home run that should be on the list. Like, didn't he walk off a game?
He did. He walked off the Florida Marlins, if I'm not mistaken. No, you're right. J.D. Martinez walked off the Marlins. I think it was the finale of that 3-game series against the Marlins. I think that was right after Grimace showed up. So there was certainly good timing on that. There was a Brandon Nimmo walk-off. I mean, there were some really good home runs in 2024. I wouldn't put any of those in the top 20, but it was a very special and unique season. There's no question about that. For everybody out there, you can send us your list. You can certainly critique mine and where you think these home runs kind of find themselves in the history of the New York Mets. You can email us to ricob@gmail.com, ricob@gmail.com.
Oh, before we leave, just because we have it, before we say goodbye, can we at least hear Ray Knight, the radio version?
Yes. In honor of the greatest home run in the history of the New York Mets, the radio call of Ray Knight in Game 7.
The wind-up in the delivery, swung on, hit in the air, fairly deep to left field, going back near the wall, looking up, goodbye! Home run, Ray Knight! The Mets lead 4-3!
What a call. Gary Thorne getting some love again. That's what I'm talking about.
Dude, he's one of my favorites. So underrated as a Met announcer. I always love listening to him do hockey. Like, he has such a great voice. I don't know why, but I feel like we've just totally maybe we're getting spoiled with Howie and Gary, but Gary Thorne needs more love.
Well, we give him a little bit of love on this one. I think we've had a few Gary Thorne calls of home runs. The Piazza one, I think, in the 10-run inning from a few episodes ago or 1 episode ago, and obviously that one. Ray Knight, game-winning, World Series winning home run in Game 7 of the World Series. Thank you to Gary Thorne and Bob Murphy and Gary Cohen and Bob Costas and Vin Scully and all the amazing voices we heard call these home runs. We do appreciate you listening. We hope you enjoyed this exercise in New York Mets history, and we hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Thank you very much for downloading the Rico Brogna, subscribing to the Rico Brogna, and we'll talk to you real soon with another brand new edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.